Ai, kuule mun toive, mä haluan pois. Eikö aikani täynnä jo ois? Olen jo nähnyt tämän elämän. Kaiken sai ja vielä enemmän. Kuule mun toive, mä pois. Eikö mä jo ois?
Resident Evil Biohazard is a survival horror game from Capcom, and despite its name, is actually the 23rd installment in the Resident Evil video game franchise. Going from the fixed camera angles from the initial games to over-the-shoulder perspective in the 4th, but really the 13th game, RE7 made a third times the charm reinvention to the franchise and decided to turn the game into being seen from the first person to make the horror experience more personal to experience, especially if you happen to have one of those expensive VR devices. This reinvention was done with the first time use of Capcom's new RE engine, better known as Reach for the Moon engine, which they have since also used in other games like Devil May Cry 5, Monster Hunter Rise and Street Fighter 6. In the game, we play as an apathetic civilian named Ethan Winters, who was apparently first meant to be a photojournalist after a story like Frank West in Dead Rising, but then someone at Capcom decided that ripping off Silent Hill is a better idea, and so Ethan was made to be an estranged husband whose wife Mia had gone missing in 2014. In the present day of 2017, when the game came out, Ethan is lured by Mia to Louisiana after having been MIA for the last 3 years, and like a typical video game protagonist arrives to the derelict plantation alone. Instead of acting like Grandpa Simpson in that episode where Bart worked at the burlesque house, Ethan ignores all the red flags he comes across at the place and walks into the abandoned building that screams Death Trap. In there, Ethan ends up discovering expired food that the cockroaches are still eating, a VHS of the previous people who came here before to remake Blair Witch Project, and eventually his wife Mia locked in the basement. Mia is at first confused by Ethan's presence, but she quickly decides to turn that on Ethan by making him question their relationship by claiming that
Daddy's coming. We need to go.
Ethan is too passive in processing that while Mia tries to lead them out of the basement, but she then disappears on him just so she could pull off this Evil Dead reference by catching up to him on the stairs. Mia obviously took something while briefly away from Ethan, and the couple ends up in a physical altercation where the axe gets work and Ethan becomes dominantly right-handed after Mia catches him talking on the phone with another woman, telling him to climb up to the attic and flee from the skylight. Mia once again comes at Ethan with a chainsaw, who can only fight back at his wife the only way a one-armed man can. After the lover's quarrel is over, Father Jack arrives to tell Ethan,
"Welcome to the family, son."
Ethan wakes up on a family dinner with the Baker family, where Father Jack is quickly established as the disciplined patriarch on his misbehaving son Lucas for playing with the food, while Marguerite is offended on how Ethan refuses to eat her food. Only Grandma Baker sits passively in her chair and watches as Jack comes to force-feed Ethan, until the sudden arrival of someone outside their house stops him. Ethan is left alone with Grandma until he decides to break the chair he has been tied to, and then chooses to leave when Grandma's following gaze grows way past the point of being uncomfortable. Out of the dining hall and into the crawl space below the hallway, Ethan makes it to the laundry room where he is once again called by that other woman Zoe, who is the only sane person in the family and wants to help Ethan if he can help her. She already stapled Ethan's hand back to him and tells him to meet her outside the house. Looking for a way outside, Ethan sees a cop outside the window and has apparently soiled himself so badly that he can't give the deputy proper response to his questions.
To me. There are crazy people in this house trying to fucking kill me.
Well, all right. Let me tell you this. You don't exactly seem like you playing with a full deck yourself, all right?
What is this dialogue?
Look, like I said, we've had several missing persons calls. And I can't rule out that an outsider like yourself may not be involved.
I may be one of those missing persons
you
in the
whatever you want.
future.
All right. Now that's more like it. Now, meet me in the garage. We'll talk there.
Hey, wait. You gotta give me your gun.
You must have lost your mind.
Look, officer.
Deputy.
Right. Deputy. Now, do you want to see my name in the obituaries? Or do you want to be a hero and save my life?
Eventually, Ethan is given a knife to cut through the red tape in getting to the garage, where in a subversion of that horror movie trope, Deputy Anderson ends up being both the first and last guy to die in the game, in falling victim to Jack's off-screen teleportation powers. Ethan doesn't let the deputy's unintentionally heroic sacrifice go wasted, and charges at his car parked in the garage to start driving pillurallia against Jack when his back is turned. But eventually Jack takes the wheel in apparently being a fan of the sport, and wants to score an easy victory by making Ethan crash the car.
Oh, yeah. I'm gonna take you for a ride. No, 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 no!
Both Ethan and Jack survive the car crash, but Jack is one of those people who want to make a big number out of it. Which then gives Ethan the chance to loot the garage before making his way to the main hall, where Zoe calls him once again.
Did my daddy give you a hard time?
That's your father?
He used to be.
I'm sorry, but he's dead now.
You just might be able to pull this off.
What? Pull what off?
There's something I need you to do, but I can't explain it right now. You may need some sort of keys to do it, but find a way out of the house.
Okay.
I'll be in touch.
Apparently, the Baker house is designed with trick doors that need puzzle pieces hidden around the house to open, and the door outside requires 3 dog head pieces. Looking for those brings Ethan face to face with Grandma Baker again, and a picture of a girl named Evelyn, who seemed to stay in the house back when Mia went MIA. Speaking of her, Ethan ends up finding another VHS that Mia has left for him after she apparently came down from whatever she was on previously. In it, she is trying to avoid Marguerite Baker in another house on the plantation and shows how to complete shadow puzzles, before she is eventually caught by the Baker matriarch when the tape ends. After that, Ethan finds not only the 2 dog heads, but also himself face to face with Jack again, who comes back to show Ethan that he has been given Wolverine's healing factor as a gift, probably from that little girl who used to be here 3 years ago according to his ramblings.
The little girl has given us a gift, and this gift is with me always. Ah! As you can see, the family is only part of her gift. Which in a word means you're fucked.
Ethan flees away from Jack to the one place he wouldn't look for him, aka into Jack's man cave, where he takes some of Jack's drugs to find his way to the basement, where the zombies that Resident Evil is known for have been stashed into. And just like the zombies from Resident Evil, they make you use all of your ammo on them just to get to the other side of the room. Eventually Ethan is caught in the basement by Jack once again, when he finds the 3rd and final dog head piece, and has to have an epic chainsaw duel against the Baker patriarch in the meat locker, where after so many attempts to survive, Ethan manages to harm Jack enough to force his Wolverine powers to go cancerously overdrive, and cannot healthily restore him back anymore.
Oh my god. Did I?
do me a favor and stay dead.
Did I finally do it? Oh my god. What a cathartic moment. It's just...
Now having his keys to freedom causes Ethan to Naruto run his way past Grandma Baker, and out of the house to the trailer where Zoe once again calls him to properly explain what is going on with her family.
You made it. You're the first I've ever seen make it this far.
So what is it you need me to do? Is it gonna help me get out of here?
Yes. Now listen carefully, Ethan. My family and our bodies are contaminated. I can't leave the property unless I get it out. And the same goes for Mia.
Is there a way to get it out?
We need the serum. It should clear whatever this stuff is out of the body. As long as you're not too far gone.
Alright, so where is it?
If I knew where one was, I'd already be long gone. But I have a feeling my mother has hidden some inside the old house somewhere.
So if we get this thing, I can help Mia and we can get out of here?
Right. And so can I. The old house is near the water. You can't miss it.
Alright.
I just hope you can handle my mother.
Your mother?
Be careful. They'll be looking for you.
Having defeated the patriarch of the Baker family, Ethan decides to go do the same with the matriarch as Zoe suggested, because that is the only way he could save the victims of this farm alive. To do that, Ethan directs himself to the older house near the water, where Marguerite is holding the fort and guarding what Zoe needs with bugs. That something being a mummified hand, while Zoe already has a mummified head. Luckily, Ethan manages to find a flamethrower to kill them with fire when he falls into a pit trap, only for Marguerite to flee with her lamp just when Ethan realizes that he needs it to open a counterweight lock. That leads to another boss fight where Ethan has to fight against Marguerite and her bugs, which he learns to be coming from the other place where the sun doesn't shine, and that, if anything, crosses too many lines, even in the body horror genre.
Reload faster! Reload faster!
Don't look up! You scamper your way out of this!
Faster! Faster! I know there's a game design, but fuck's sake, why is it this slow? Oh, you fuck. Why do you keep tormenting me like this, game? It's almost like it didn't have any effect.
You're not getting away this time.
Did I...
Just fucking stay dead, okay?
Wow. So much frustration.
With Marguerite reunited with Jack in whatever afterlife the Resident Evil universe has, Ethan grabs her lantern to use as a counterweight in the old house to access the upper floor, where a young girl's voice tells him to
stay away.
And where the atmosphere is so suspenseful that you need to start singing Arttu Viskari's Unknown Patient to keep calm.
The song is about PTSD suffering World War II soldier who is also suffering from dementia, meaning that he is suffering and re-experiencing everything he went through in war. And the chorus goes something like this. Hear my wish, I want to leave. Is my time not already filled in here? I have already seen this life. I gave everything and even more. Is my time not already full? I'd like to leave as a soldier, signed the Unknown Patient. It rhymes better because soldier and patient sound kind of similar in Finnish, like sotilas and potilas. But there is the opening of the chorus, like it says, hear my wish, I want to leave. It's pretty much like this place. If I was really physically going through these houses and everything else, between boss fights which are frustrating and I would be singing that song in my head, like how my avatar is doing in the thumbnail. Because it is not enough already.
Getting the hand and Naruto running out of the dark attic leads to Ethan catching another phone call from Zoe, who promises to wait for him at the trailer. But unfortunately, Ethan is there reintroduced to Lucas Baker, the firstborn son of the family who is more of a grindhouse horror fan.
Me and me, right?
Hey, buddy! I thought you should know. I decided that Zoe needed a timeout. She and Mia are here with me. And they're keeping each other company.
Just let them both go. What do you need them for?
Nah, that's family business, Ethan, and not your concern. Understand? Now, up ahead, feel free to come by anytime and I'll give it to you. But only if you participate in a little activity I've put together just for you.
And forces Ethan to dance according to his flute now just for shits and giggles. The first thing that crazy bastard demands Ethan to do is to go back to the basement, where the molded zombies have managed to escape to roam around the house, and where the keys to the barn that Lucas has turned into his Saw-inspired playhouse are hidden into. Getting that key and dodging the mold zombies leads to Ethan taking refuge in Lucas and Zoe's old shared room, where he, by a great chance, manages to discover another VHS that provides him with a preview to what Lucas has in store for him.
I can't move.
Suddenly I'm not bothered by the fact that no one has invited me to their birthday parties anymore. It should be a weight on Ethan's psyche how two people have died for him to survive, and know how to survive in going forward. Two instances don't make it a habit, but when it happens on a third time, Ethan can truly feel how lonely it is. But so far, he can learn from Clancy's mistakes to ruin Lucas's fun, before fighting his way to Zoe and Mia in the boathouse behind Lucas's funhouse. Zoe uses the hand and head to do what she knows, while Ethan takes the fruits of her labor for himself, right before Father Jack comes back in his final form, as you should expect from a Resident Evil boss fight, that also as a video game boss fight has clear weak points to shoot at while running around the boathouse, to which Ethan has already gotten used to by now.
This is getting old, Jack.
Unfortunately, that is not enough as subverted expectations, and Ethan has to use one of the 2 cures on Jack to put him down. Which leads to what was probably originally meant to be a tough decision to make in choosing to cure either Mia or Zoe with the remaining cure, back when Ethan was supposed to be a Frank West type photojournalist and not Mia's husband. Or that way it would have been easier to choose to save Zoe instead of Mia after all the cooperative help she had given to Ethan. But in the sickness and health of the holy matrimony, Ethan canonically chooses to cure Mia, while leaving Zoe behind with the promises of coming back for her later.
I'll send help.
Don't bother. There won't be anyone left to help!
The story of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard does not, however, end when leaving the Baker residence, as passing a shipwrecked cargo ship caused the rain to attack Ethan and Mia's boat crossing the swamp and separate them, where the game turns into what the previous Resident Evil games have been, and where we get to play as Mia for a change. Separated from Ethan, she has to recall her memories from before her time in the Baker family's captivity and remember the bioweapon she was originally tasked to transport while posing as its mother, Evelyn, whom Ethan caught a few glimpses of at the old house and has that kind of mind of a younger girl that you can't distract her from trying to force you into becoming her family member with Disney films anymore.
Watch it.
What? Why?
You need to remember, so we can be a family.
No, you need to shoot her full of drugs for that to happen. Mia manages to reach Ethan with these instructions before Evelyn manages to catch and infect her again, with Ethan needing to finish the game doing what he has been doing throughout the entire game anyway. While separated from Mia, Ethan was having an out-of-body experience with Jack's ghost of his former self in asking him to avenge his family for what Evelyn did to them.
Listen, the girl just wants a family of her own. She's the key. All right? You find her and you stop her. Ethan, free my family. Please.
And the rest of the game has Ethan run through mines, killing more of the molded zombies, and create that drug against Evelyn from the equipment that Lucas has left behind while thanking his beneficiaries, before climbing his way back to the guest house where the game began in the first place. Back there again, Ethan can now understand how Evelyn was controlling Mia when she overreacted to Ethan talking to Zoe on the phone, as a completely innocent misunderstanding of him not wanting to become Evie's father with Mia as her mom. Unfortunately, by now we can all see that Evelyn has gone too far with what she has done, and Ethan has to euthanize her. Or that is what he tries, and instead ends up learning that Evelyn would have probably died on her own eventually, because in the last 3 years she has aged up to be mistaken for Grandma Baker. Evelyn still doesn't want to go into that good night without taking Ethan with her, but then in the almost 11th hour arrives the assistance in the form of a powerful Albert One gun that releases Evelyn from being forced to live looking like that. The main game finally ends with Ethan being picked up by the legendary Chris Redfield, who not only helps Ethan to be reunited with Mia, but also sends that help Ethan promised to Zoe.
Found her. She's a tough kid. Of course. Hang on. Someone wants to speak to you.
Zoe. Zoe, are you there?
It's you. I don't believe it. You actually made it.
We both did.
You didn't forget about me.
I told you I'd send help, and I always keep my promises.
Thank you, Ethan.
And in his own campaign, goes back to personally make sure that Lucas will not get to hurt anyone else by doing what he does best.
Game over.
Resident Evil 7 Biohazard was that kind of a scary game that it took me 4 to 5 years after buying it to just get past Jack Baker and make my way to the garage. I can only imagine what it was like for those who tried to play through it with VR, because that is way too expensive for me. I can't speak for the game's replay value because I immediately went from it to play Resident Evil Village, but I can say that after experiencing House Beneviento as both Ethan and Rosemary, going back to the Baker house probably won't be that bad, especially if I can remember where the zombies are hiding, when Jack is going to catch Ethan off guard, and that Evelyn can't do anything to Ethan besides looking uncomfortably at him. I also probably want to use those coins for better upgrades onto Ethan's durability rather than onto the weapons that can run out of ammo. Depending on how well this video gets received, I might make a follow-up to it with Village sooner rather than later. You can better those chances for it by liking this video, commenting what you thought about it, sharing it for more people to see, and subscribing to my channel for other videos. Dinging the bell can also help you be alerted for when I stream video games, because chatting with me when I play can get your name added to the end credits of these videos. May your heart be your guiding key.